ni ai ni ta no du te o ti linh tu shi ning noi gầu mong ni chi bo ba lo bia hai cho ti linh tu tu mi mai gầu mua cho kê tu xia e kia ư mua sao kia lo ua y mi đại đau chia.
In a world dominated by digital screens and instant gratification, there's an increasing divide in our human connections and difficulties expressing our vulnerabilities. Letters to My Podcast explores the tapestries of storytelling by transforming written letters into spoken word. I have the honor of interviewing courageous guests as they dedicate their letters to a loved one, showcasing their vulnerability through their past experience, reflecting on challenges and lessons learned, present realities, exploring current identities, struggles, and passion, future aspirations, sharing their hopes, goals, and dreams for the future. Lastly, and most important, is wisdom sharing, imparting their wisdom, their advice, and inspiration to the next generation. Some of you who may not be Hmong may be wondering, what is a Tu and why Mai? The names Mai and Tu are two of the most common names in the Hmong culture, similar to Muhammad, Fatima, Juan, and Maria. Tu is a wordplay to two. Mai is a wordplay to Mai. Hence, the guest dedicates a letter to my daughter, son, partner, or whoever. Hello, 안녕하세요. My name is Sai. I'm your podcast host with the Letters to My Podcast. Welcome, where I get the privilege to capture, reflect, and share stories. I love what I do as a social worker. I'm proud to be Hmong. We are a small and mighty ethnic group from Southeast Asia. Get ready for the guest to Sa Sol, which translates in our language to send message. Again, Sa Sol, to send message by the way of letters that speak and stories that heal. Here's our next guest. Enjoy, vulnerable listener. Bye. Hello, 안녕하세요, everyone. Welcome to the Letters to My Podcast. Today we have a special guest, and her name is Sharon. I wanted to tell you all a little bit about her. I'm going to read your bio. Sharon is a writer, filmmaker, and community organizer. She is the co-founder of Hmong NYC, a network that is now celebrating over 17 years of connecting Hmong New Yorkers. Sharon was born in Laos and raised in the Twin Cities, Minnesota. Her short story, Smokes, was included in the 2000 seminal Hmong anthology, Bamboo Among the Oaks, published by Minnesota Historical Society Press. Sharon was an active member of early Asian American literary scene in the Twin Cities. Her short film, Confluence, was included in the 2013 LA Asian Film Festival. A lifelong advocate for the arts, Sharon continues to create and explore writing via stand-up, poetry, and fiction. Thank you again, Sharon, for joining the podcast. Can you introduce yourself, please? And Sharon, tell the young folks or the kids who don't understand what Antai Gongtar is.
It means the youngest daughter.
Is there any connotation that comes along with that, similar to the Hmong culture with the young boy?
I always felt like Gonza always felt like the baby, so like the most precious. I think it's different with the boys because the Tunsa, which is the youngest son, is always supposed to be like the favorite son because they are assumed to take care of the parents in their old age. So they're basically like, the closest to the parents. Whereas the daughter, the little girl, is usually kind of the baby. We're always kind of treated differently. That's the understanding. And I will have to say it was kind of true for me because I was really close to my dad. And he just was really sweet and kind to me. So I think I was a true Gonza in that sense.
Thank you for sharing that. I appreciate that, Sharon. Again, welcome to the podcast and thank you for taking the time. And I want to tell the guest who Sharon is to me, similar to what Sharon's bio said in terms of creating a community. It was me moving to New York City in 2011 and not having a community here. So I was really lucky to meet one of our friend, Kanu, who was running our page at that time and got a chance to meet the community. Having the community here, Sharon, I have to let you know, allowed me to stay in New York City longer. So thank you for that.
I mean, I remember coming to New York for the first time and being completely alone.
Mm-hmm.
It's a big city and it's really hard to reach out to people. It's the days before the internet and Facebook. So just slowly we kept finding each other, and it just felt like such a comfort to have a family or chosen family of Hmong in a city that just feels generally
Right.
kind of isolating.
Very much so. Yeah, chosen family is the correct word. So thank you, Sharon. So Sharon, I wanted you on the podcast for a couple reasons, things that we're gonna share with the listeners today, and also talk about your experience with interracial marriage, being a writer, the importance of reading and building community. And I know you're gonna share with us like staying curious, humility, leading with love, and so forth. So thank you again. And Sharon, when you heard about the podcast, Letters to My Podcast, where letters that speak and stories that heal, give us your thought about the podcast and kind of why you wanted to join.
Well, I think it's an amazing idea. I mean, it's so hard because I feel like we want to connect with the next generation. We want to, I guess, share our experiences. And growing up, I always felt like, adults wanted to do that to me as well, but they were always lecturing and it always felt like very formal.
Mm-hmm.
So I love the format of having a podcast and just being more conversational, being more intimate through letters and stories. And that's my jam. I'm like a writer, so I'm all about
Right.
stories. I'm all about intimacy and relationships rather than, being more didactic and preachy. I mean, I guess that was the word that we used when we were young. Like we just felt like our adults in our lives were getting preachy when they talked to us.
Right.
And that's not the relationship I want to have with the next generation.
Who did you write this letter to, and what is your relationship with this person? And if it's not a person, tell me why you wrote the letter this way.
So this was the hardest part about this project because I have 14 nieces and nephews. I have 1,000 cousins and friends, and I have so many young people in my life that I'm happy to write a letter to, and I should write a letter to. But I have to say, it was my husband who started the tradition of writing letters, like little internet messages, to our nieces when they were young, like in their teenage years. And he started with with one of our nieces who was just going through some things, and then it just became an expectation. So he would write letters to them in their teen years. And it was very sweet. And then I realized Linnaeus is turning 16. She's my
Mm-hmm.
niece. And I was like, this is her letter.
Mm-hmm.
So she's up to bat. I mean, obviously, I love her very much. And I'm happy to write this letter to her. Glad that we found a moment to do it.
That's beautiful. Well, I think the listeners are ready. Go ahead and jump in.
All right, so here we go, Linnaeus. Just as a preamble, I want people to know that I named her because when her mother was pregnant, she already had 3 daughters, and she wanted me to help her name this fourth daughter. And I've always liked Carl Linnaeus. He's a little controversial in more recent time, but he's a botanist, the founding father of botany. And just his drawings of flowers are amazing. And I've always just kind of liked that name in general. So she is named Linnaeus after Carl Linnaeus, the botanist. Dear Linnaeus, adults are always lecturing young people about how to live your life, but I believe in the power of learning and understanding through stories. That is why I want to share my story with you. When I was growing up, I was raised in a strict Hmong and Christian home. Hmong people were new to the world outside of Southeast Asia and very misunderstood or ignored by the mainstream. Also, nearly all Hmong adults were traumatized by war, which I'm sure your parents have told you about. In our house, as good Hmong daughters, we were expected to stay home and take care of the family, like you do now. As a good Christian, we were further expected to not participate in secular things, meaning things of this earth. So, wearing heavy makeup, going out to parties without your family, or joining sports, or anything my parents didn't consider academic was out of the question. My 16th year was spent at school band practice, and church. Keep in mind, there was no internet at the time. If I begged my parents, they would let me go to a basement party only if they knew enough of my good friends would be there. I began dating because my friend told me I should. It was dumb, but they only set me up with a boy because he was my girlfriend's boyfriend's best friend. I didn't even pick him. When he came over to meet my parents for the first time, he brought a strawberry cheesecake. I was old enough to date, but he wasn't a Christian, so she didn't fully approve of him. Still, he had the good manners to come to my parents and sit with them and for a few hours talk about his father and his grandfather. He had to tell my parents enough names so they would get a sense of who he was. A few days later, my parents let me go to the mall with him and my friend and her boyfriend, his best friend. We didn't hold hands or anything romantic. I honestly don't even think I really liked him. I told my friend that I didn't like him, and she just laughed and said, "You don't have to like him to date him." I thought to myself, yeah, I think I kind of do have to like him. That was when I realized Hmong ideas about dating was not for me. I had to do things completely different, starting with actually liking the guys I dated. What a revelation. Considering that nearly all, and I'm not exaggerating, nearly all my girlfriends, my Hmong girlfriends, got married before graduating high school. I think I made the right choice. I wondered how many of them actually really liked the guys they married. After that, I was fine with not having a boyfriend for most of my high school and college life. Besides, my church told me I should stay away from boys, so I thought I was doing doubly good work. By the time I hit 30 years old, my mom was practically begging me to marry. She would still have to wait another 30 years. Sorry, Mom. Instead of dating and going out, I read a lot of books. Any book I could find. My older sister, Eileen, was in college at the time, so I read many of her books. I especially loved the ones about faraway countries and strange ideas, like feminism. I also loved music and asked everyone I knew to make me a mixtape so I could hear new music. Because I was so sheltered and homebound, I developed a deep and everlasting curiosity for life. Today, I have traveled the world and tried every new experience I could find. And still, I want more. It's wonderful to discover new things because it reveals more about yourself. I hope you find your curiosity because it will always be a way out of wherever you are and into something bigger and better. And when you love the world, it makes you more empathetic and tolerant of things you don't understand. For your 16th year, my wish for you is that you remember that you are an inherently good person and you should trust your instincts, just like I did when I knew I needed to date a boy that I liked. So you can feel better, be more secure, and always growing. Also, may you maintain an everlasting curiosity about the world and what you can do to make it better. Sincerely, your auntie who loves you.
Sharon, wow, what a letter. Thank you so much for sharing that. I had a couple laughs in there, so I really appreciate that. um, and you hit on touch base on a lot of cultural norms and also like thinking differently and traveling. And I love that self reflection about yourself because I'm right there with you. I love traveling. If it wasn't for New York City, I don't think I would have had such a more worldview of the world and learn more about myself and also get to experience these things. My favorite thing is experiencing food. And for you, I want to ask you a reflection on writing the letter a little bit because some other guests have said that it was difficult. They haven't written a letter before. So, share your experience of writing this letter and how did you feel?
It took me a while to think about distilling my thoughts because if you ask anyone for advice, they have like a million things, do this, do this, do this. And I
Yeah.
just remember being a kid, I'm just like, I have no idea what you're talking about. Like you're talking about things I've never heard of. And I think that's why stories are so important. I mean, it has to be relatable. What does it mean to be 16? What does it mean to, be curious, to understand your instincts? Because, yeah, these are words. Then they're just words until you connect them to something. So this story was basically inspired by just remembering what it felt like to be a teenager and being kind of like left at home.
Damn true.
I know, because you don't have a car.
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't have a boyfriend who picked me up. So I was like just really, really homebound. And I remember just feeling really isolated and lonely. And books and thinking about the world and listening to new music all the time. It was like a way to just kind of like leave my house, leave my own thinking, leave my world. And I know that kids have the internet now, so you can obviously go anywhere you want at any minute, and you have a sense that you see the world, but it's still about doing.
Right. It's all about
It's
doing it.
Yeah, you still got to go out there. You still got to see the world. You still have to go to shows. You have to meet people. I mean, that's part of that curiosity. I mean, reading about something was one thing. Going out and actually living
Mm-hmm.
it is a very different thing. It's just reading and watching the internet videos and getting understanding of the world is one thing. But going out and being a part of it is a completely different adventure.
Exactly. And on that note, based on childhood, let's explore your past experience. So, just for the listeners, what we do is to interview the guests on their past experience, present realities, future aspiration, and wisdom sharing. So, I'm going to ask you a few questions and you can tell me which one fits best with you. Okay. So, what were some of your dreams when you were younger, till a certain age? What made kind of shaped you who you were today, or what was instrumental? And yeah, just talk about those experiences.
Sure. I remember one of my earlier ambitions was to become an epidemiologist. I like biology. I like science. I kind of like the idea of like
Tell the listener.
basic. Sure. So I think when I was little, I was alone a lot because I have two older sisters that were teenagers at the same time and they were doing their own thing. And I had two brothers who were, boys running around and doing their own thing. And so I was kind of like the odd girl out. My parents were very busy, as most parents were. And I had to kind of like figure myself out really fast. Again, reading and being curious was a big part of it, but I also really crave friendships and really developing deep relationships with others. And that was kind of how I started understanding community and creating community.
And now apply that to Minnesota, Minneapolis. Like name some things so people can like kind of like reference your experience with that too, or St.
Oh, yeah.
Paul. Sorry.
Oh, St. Paul was such a different place back in like the 80s, 90s. We were still a refugee community. People forget about the poverty. It was, McDonough, Mount Airy, Congress. They were huge hotbeds for Hmong community because everybody was living in the poverty lines.
Right, and
And
those
they
are the
were,
public housing
yes. Exactly, and but that's where the Hmong community was. And the really fascinating thing is, it was a joyful time because it did feel like we were in a community again, even though
Mm-hmm.
we were so, poor. It was still very rich with like activity and caring because we had just survived such a traumatic
Yeah.
event and we found each other. And the parents were, recovering from the trauma, but the children were starting to like understand and appreciate each other. And again, nobody knew who we were, the Americans or other communities were just kind of looking at us like immigrants, refugees, but they didn't really know like where we came from. And I remember as an adult telling people about the Vietnam War, and it was the first time anybody had even told them about the secret war. I mean, it still is a secret to this day. So it felt like we were just this like quiet, very, very tight knit community in St. Paul. And it was a really special time to be around, but we did struggle for resources.
Now let's back up a little bit. Prior to that, you said you were born in Laos. Were
Oh,
you
yeah.
born in a refugee camp?
Oh, it was the worst. I was
Tell
born in
us.
I was born in 1974, so the war was winding down, and I was 2 years old when we fled. Like that's when the Hmong say "Teketa," which is like the beginning of the race out of Laos. My dad did work with the CIA, and thankfully we were granted papers to leave. We were sponsored through a church, but I fell, the notorious banana story. I was on a picnic table and I wanted
Yes.
bananas. And apparently I was 2 years old and I reached for the bananas. Yeah, it was terrible. And I smashed my ribs. And because it was like internal injuries, nobody knew. It was just like a big bruise. But I was crying and crying. Apparently I was inconsolable. And then they realized there was something up and I had a massive infection. I was very
Shit.
sick. I was in the hospital. I was emaciated because we were
What does that
refugees,
mean? Initiate.
like starving. I
Mm-hmm.
was, my mom said I looked like an owl because my eyes were so big And when you are a baby and you are dehydrated, like basically your eyes start bulging. It was pretty terrifying. My mother was also sick, so we were both in the hospital, and she was, not doing well either. So we had to delay our departure from the refugee camp. And then about a couple months later, we left. And by then, we had to look for each other because once you come to America, everyone's scattered. I mean, some people went to Wisconsin, California, Michigan, and that's again before internet. You just had to ask around and send tapes to Laos and Thailand and say, "Hey, do you guys know where so and so is?" And they're like, "I think he's in Wisconsin." And then you had to ask around just through calling and seeing Hmong people and trying to find each other. And every time we found a cousin or an auntie, they'd look at me and they'd say, "You're the sick one. You're the reason your parents didn't join us." So I was like, blame. Like, why are you putting this on me? I was
No,
just
I'm
a
too.
baby. I blame the bananas.
But if you think about it, it's the trauma behind that, right? If you think about
Oh
it, I can
yeah.
only imagine your parents are, oh no, bitch, but they can make they could just think about
Mm,
that. So
I
I
know.
think this is an important journey to share with folks because in one of the other podcasts I talked about like our parents' generation. This is going to be the last generation that experienced whether it's a refugee or escaping genocide here, and that's why we want to capture these stories. And also for this, I'm sure I don't know about you, Sharon. I have not fully asked my parents for their whole migration story yet, and I still need to. And they don't tell me the whole thing. So
Well, it was so traumatic. I mean,
um,
my dad doesn't want to talk
I
about it.
know.
We have a picture of his university classmates, and all he can say is he points to two people. And he's like, "I know that person's alive. I know that person's alive." That's all he can say because it's too devastating.
Can you talk to me about a special person in your life who I know very well and share your story of how you two met and how you two got together and fast forward to now?
So everybody in New York knows that I'm married to one of the best men in the world. Oh my goodness. I met my husband Brandon in 2003 when I moved here and I did not know anybody. I went online, and this is in the very early days of internet dating where you actually had to write things about yourself. And I wrote, my favorite books and what I like to do. I don't know. It was just like a really nice profile about who I am. And then I saw Brandon's profile. He messaged me, and he was an absolute nerd. It was amazing.
Sounds like you, Sharon.
I know. Well, my profile, because at that point I had so many, unfortunately, like white men contacting me and saying, "Oh, I love Asians. I've always wanted an Asian
Fetish.
experience." I know. So I changed my tagline to "Asian fetishists need not apply." And Brandon's like very first line to me in his message was like, "Oh, don't worry about me. I hate Asians." I'm like, "Oh, this is gonna be great." So we hit it off. I mean, we've been together ever since. He is a white Southern American, which I never imagined I would be dating. Coming from Minnesota, I'm very liberal.
Right.
When I found out he voted for Bush Sr., I was like,
Oh
ready.
Lord.
I know, I was like, I guess this is the end of us. But then I realized I'm like, that's my closed mindedness. That's where I was limited in my thinking. That you know he and his family have different beliefs. They were in a different community. I mean, Georgia and Minnesota can be more polar opposites in terms of culture and politics. But I mean, it doesn't define him. He doesn't have like a Bush bumper sticker. This is not, the totality of our personalities. But he's an artist, a brilliant artist. He's a very, very smart, thoughtful, caring person. And when I met him, it just made sense. So when we first started dating, I kind of didn't tell my parents about him because I didn't date a lot. So in general,
How
you
did
know,
race play a role?
oh gosh, it was huge because I'm the first person in my family to date outside my race, like basically anybody outside of the Hmong culture. So back then there were a lot of questions, and my mother was always concerned because she had this belief that if you married outside of the Hmong community, then you won't be close to your Hmong family anymore. I guess you've seen things like that happen. And with daughters, you generally do leave the family to join another family. So her fear is that I would leave the family. And I'm very close to my family. But I mean, surprise, Brandon is such a loving person. He adores my parents, and my mom loves Brandon. I would actually say that she loves him more than she loves me.
That's hilarious.
No, because she's always like, "How's Brandon doing? Oh my gosh, don't be too mean to him. Stop bossing him around." I'm like, "How about me?
How about me? How am I doing? Yeah.
I know. Aren't you worried about him bossing me around?"
I know, right? Does he know how to use a Hmong knife?
Mm. Are you kidding? He loves it. He's always busting it out. Actually, Brandon was at unfortunately a Hmong funeral this past winter, and he was cleaning chickens and tables. And I'm like, that's a good Bao thing to do.
Yeah, such a
He's
Bao.
like a real Hmong Bao now. That means son-in-law.
Yep.
But yes, he fits right in. Never complains. Is always happy to be co-founder of Hmong NYC. Because when we first started forming Hmong NYC, I was dating Brandon, and Brandon had a big apartment. So all our gatherings were at his apartment.
Fun.
And yeah, it was a culture shock because Hmong people are rambunctious and Southern people are not.
And we pack ourselves in the rooms like sardines. So yeah.
Oh yeah. So he was hosting a lot.
It's very important. And sure, I understand that you two got married at Hmong American Partnership in Eastside St. Paul, and also talk about more about like cultural hardships, dating outside the race, and marrying outside the race.
Oh, for sure. I think it was interesting in the beginning because when I moved to New York, I didn't know what my next step was going to be. I was just going to come here for a few years and then like, if I don't like it, I can go somewhere else. But Brandon is a filmmaker, so it's either this or LA, and LA is kind of out of the question for us. So when we got married, I kept thinking, I was like, oh, this is going to be like our life now. We're going to stay up here. I'm not going back to Minnesota. This is going to be completely different. And I kind of remember like the Hmong community being like, oh, trying to figure out where I am at. Because I'm not living in Minnesota. I'm married to this white guy. They don't know if I'm going to be part of their community anymore. Like my uncles would be like, oh, if you're just going to be outside of the Hmong community now. And even my own brothers were like, oh, yeah, well, whatever. It was nice knowing you, kind of an attitude. And I was like, no, this is ridiculous. I get to decide who I am.
Absolutely.
I'm always going to be Hmong. It doesn't matter where I go or who I marry. I am 100% Hmong.
Biologically, you're Hmong. No one can freaking change that.
Well, and I think in Hmong. I love in
Exactly.
Hmong. I care about people in Hmong. It's so weird when you think that being Hmong has to be a certain set of behaviors or practices. I'm like, no, I think if you live a Hmong life, it really is about caring and having community. I don't know any Hmong person who just wants to be by themselves.
I know. And as human beings, we have to be in relations and interactions and in community with others anyways. You made me thought of something, and this is what I love about our culture. Yes, we gone through trauma and war, but there's something that's beauty about us. We're adaptable, we're flexible, and we can acculturate. Acculturate means that we maintain our cultural identity while actually, I'm stuck. Sharon, help me with that. Acculturate? I'm stuck.
Well, I think the thing is that because we were a nationless people, we have always had our culture with us. So our culture is not tied to a country. Our culture has never been tied to any specific location or thing. It was always us. We're the culture. We're the nation. We're a nation of us. So if we're in Laos, we're Hmong. If we're in America, we're Hmong. If we're in Australia, we're Hmong. You take your culture with you. There's no going back to being a Hmong. You're a Hmong person wherever you are, and that is the beauty about finding Hmong people in New York and elsewhere. There's such a relief and comfort, and I honestly do not find a lot of cultures who do this because every time I tell people about Hmong NYC, they're just so amazed. They're like, "Oh my god, that's so cute," because Hmong people always seek to find each other. We have always been nomadic. We're 5,000 years of traveling this earth and bringing our people with us, finding each other, having a network of hamlets and villages, and knowing like, oh, I have a cousin in Michigan. Maybe you know them. I have a cousin in south of France. Maybe we're related. And our network is in our head and in our relationships. So that's the significance of having elders and having an oral tradition and remembering who we are, how we're connected. Oh, you're in New York? Do you know about Hmong NYC? Do you know about
Mm-hmm.
Sharon? And then that's exactly how Hmong people have been doing it for 5,000 years. Yeah, I mean, I think it was always difficult because I mean that first story about me not wanting to just date someone because they told me to. It sounds ridiculous now, but that kind of was a normal thing to just date because they told you to. That's ridiculous. So I have always been very, very
Yeah.
particular about who I dated, and I really have to like them.
101.
First of all, make sure you like
Well,
them.
well, we have to give the younger generation context too. Our culture at one point was something called jipenye.
Oh
And
yeah.
so can you talk more about that?
Oh gosh, I mean, that's kind of accounts for half of the women in my school that got married. It's very sad. But yeah, it was very common, and apparently it still happens, which is ridiculous, where a guy, Hmong guy, can just come and kidnap a girl and then, spend enough time with her alone with a chicken and like some relatives, and then she becomes his wife. And it's basically getting married by kidnapping a bride. And it's very sad, and it does happen. It's terrifying. So I think all women were afraid of that growing up. It was just the worst thing that could happen to you.
Yeah.
Um, but then there's also just like accidents where, like, if you're out too late and your parents don't approve, the parents will make you get married. Like, there are lots of ways in Hmong families can just kind of all of a sudden decide that you're going to get married. They want you, you're too old. Maybe you should marry this guy. And then next, you're married. If your husband passes, and then you can marry his brother just so that you can stay in the family. Like, this marriage is like transactional. It was like a business. It did not feel emotional in some cases. And it's very, very sad that that was the case. And especially for women, we did not have a lot of say in our marriages sometimes. And
Yeah.
that's a
I think
tragedy.
I think the thing for me as a feminist too as well, I think it was weird to me. I was like it was like a second class citizen, and I got all the benefits just by the fact that I'm a male, right? And it wasn't it's similar to racism too as well. I was like, oh, I reap the benefits. I seen that just for that, and it wasn't fair. And I noticed the difference. So the social work in me is I'm a problem solver. We all with the mindset by Paul Wilson, we all do better when we all do better. So when I see that, it makes it hard and tough sometimes to align with the culture. I know the culture is not all bad. Every culture needs to improve. And this is the things that we want to bring up and talk about and how we challenge this, how we fight it, how we change it. But before we do that, we need to talk about it. So thank you for sharing that. Sharon, is there anything else in you and Brennan's relationship that you want to add and so forth?
Oh, so I think the biggest thing, I always tell my girlfriends this, but I never saw myself dating or marrying a white guy. Even I was surprised. I was like, what? This is weird.
Right.
I did not see this for myself. Because I think I always saw myself marrying a liberal, like a person of color, somebody, who can join me in this battle against racism, a feminist. So I remember when I was young, I went home and I was getting ready for Brent and my wedding, and I was getting things ready. And there was my journal. I've journaled my whole life, and I always like to turn back to my old paint journals and just read them. And I was reading one where I had broken up with this guy I was kind of dating, and I was just kind of getting frustrated. And I wrote down like 5 things. And I'm like, why can't I just date a guy who loves me and my culture? A guy who's smart, and musical, who can enjoy music with me because I really love music, and who's tall and handsome. It's not asking a lot, right? And then I think it was just like, cares about my family. I was just like, wait, I'm discovering Brandon. This is literally Brandon. And I looked at the page, and it was 10 years to the date before my wedding date. And I was like, oh my gosh, I've been looking for Brandon for 10 years. And all this time I thought he was going to be like an Asian guy, or, a person of color, or a liberal from Minnesota. And turns out it's a white dude in Georgia. And I never said he had to be this race, or he had to be of this kind of thing. I only cared about the person he was inside. And that's where I think I was kind of surprised, because I thought that person I was describing was only a certain type of person. And I realized, I'm like, oh, that was my closed-mindedness, not realizing that that person can be just a white dude from the South.
Well, it also goes to show how much, whether it's culture or family, can influence the lens that we have. When I mean the lens is, it's like how you see the world. And even for me, I struggle. My last two relationship were Mika people. When I say Mika, it's white people too as well, and I've struggled with that too as well. I'm open to anyone, but it's just the fact of not feeling whole or not accepted. And what you're sharing with us is just do what's best for you, because the short end of it, it's just like what makes me happy, what brings me joy. And this is very powerful, and I'm glad that we're having more and more, as we have been in America, what, 50 years now, that what we are hopefully changing on this. But let's continue to talk about it. Thank you so much for sharing, Sharon. We're going to transition to the present realities, talking about your identities and your projects and mental health and so forth. So I'm going to start with identity, Sharon. In the past, I've asked guests to share your identity, because identities represent who we are. So what are these identities of yours? Why they're important, and how do they represent Sharon?
So I identify as an artist, first and foremost. I'm also Hmong, of course, but I think of life as one big creative endeavor. We struggle to formulate words and thoughts, to communicate, to share, and to, basically make contact with one another. Uh, that's like one of the biggest challenges we have in life, is communicating effectively. So I love the written word. I love being able to share thoughts and feelings, experiences, and I really enjoy hearing people's stories. I'm like kind of like mining for it all the time. Like, okay, tell me what happened. Because
Exactly.
yeah, I get really excited about people's experiences. And I really identify as just like a storyteller, a story gatherer, I
Mm-hmm.
guess, community organizer, just because that is born out of creating community, is sharing experiences. I feel like I found different ways to make that manifest,
Mm-hmm.
like in terms of writing, filmmaking. I'm doing stand up comedy right now. It's kind of funny. But I am sharing my story. A lot of it is obviously autobiographical. So it's very surprising when I have people be like, oh, never heard about that. Offering a perspective from, a 50-year-old Hmong woman's perspective. That's new. And the more connections you make, the more will start to understand and think about like their expectations or what they thought they knew. It just challenges people's understanding of what other people are. So yeah, I think I'm an artist, a Hmong artist. I love sharing my stories and just creating community through storytelling.
Absolutely. Sarah, I want to expand more on writing. Whether, I guess, just how I see the world, sometimes, a lot of time, people in poverty, there's a higher rate of reading comprehension and literacy due to the becoming as immigrants, or just not having the resources, access, and poverty plays a big role. Talk about your experience as a refugee, an immigrant, learning the English language and why it was important to you, and share with the community. Kind of tell them why, teach them why it's important that they should emphasize on.
Yeah, well, I think that's the next thing about a storytelling is you don't have to have money. That is what refugees
That's
and Hmong
awesome.
communities, everybody, they just love to share their stories. Like Hmong people, I argue, is an artistic culture. Like we love to sing kutia, we love to share stories, are so artistic. We have such an artistic spirit. Like, think about it, like our funerals, our weddings, our first month birth, they involve kutia, they involve storytelling, they involve music. We are an artistic culture, and that's always been with us, regardless of our status. And the sad thing, I learned this when I was studying kutia and making this never ending documentary about Hmong kutia, is that for women, it's only appropriate for us to sing kutia when we're single. So when we are young and courting, finding a boyfriend, we can sing it. When we're married, we can sing it kind of to ourselves, not really publicly, but we can kind of do it as an inner monologue. And then when we're old and a widow, we can sing again
Hmm.
because we're singing about our past, we're singing about our experiences. And we have a Hmong Elder Center, and the elders there, They sing in the van ride to the
What?
chapel. They sing all the time. They sing the little kutsias when it's snowing. One of them was just like, "Oh, it's snowing. What a weird little country we live in." And they're just so poetic. They're like the most poetic generation. I just love that. I mean, that is what just makes things so special about our culture. We feel things so deeply, and they have just this really amazing way of reflecting. So I love the fact that Hmong people are storytellers. They're natural storytellers. And then they love music because they used to play like with leaves. They'd take up a leaf and blow a song, and they would communicate that way across the mountaintops. Like that was a common way to communicate. I think that's adorable. And when I was in Thailand and one of them was demonstrating it, I'm like, yeah, you can hear it very far. And then also, our language in general has a sing song kind of a intonation to it, so that when they blow the leaf, it does sound like words. I'm like, oh yeah, I know what they're saying.
I know, it's so cool. Yeah.
When you have it demonstrated, it's so fascinating. And this artistic ability, this inherent artistic ability in the Hmong community is just like so beautiful and so valuable. I interviewed Dr. Yang Dao. He's the first Hmong PhD, and he, as a Hmong leader, he helped basically with the diaspora in terms of negotiating diplomatic ways of Hmong people escaping Laos and Thailand after the war. Very instrumental in the development of the Hmong community. But I interviewed him for my Gutsia documentary because his father was a famous musician, and he wrote a song, like a Hmong anthem. Yang Dao did. Dr. Yang Dao did, and he played it first, and he had all these
You have to
instruments.
share
I'm like,
that with us. I want to put
I
this on
know.
the podcast. Okay.
I know. It's
Yeah.
really adorable. I just love him. And he said it himself that art and music is the spirit of the Hmong community. And he's right. Every time I see it. And even now, if you look at YouTube, these Hmong kids, they are so musical. They're so talented. They have this inherent desire to sing and to share.
And to sing in Hmong, which I'm very impressed. So I'm
Yeah,
really
their Hmong
happy.
is really good.
Yeah.
And Hmong people can karaoke.
Damn true.
So we will not stop singing.
Yeah,
Even
okay.
when people ask us to, we're like, no, we're going to keep singing. I think that's just so fascinating and beautiful about our culture.
Absolutely, Sharon. I think I love the creative aspects of it too as well. And this is something I want to get more Hmong designers, textile artists on here so they can share the stories and so forth. Just a couple comments on Kutsia, and then I listened to a documentary about Kendrick Lamar and his teacher, the one was instrumental to him being a rapper. Is that poetry is like rap without the music. And that's the beauty of Kutsia. It's just beautiful how we sing it and how you're talking about the creative aspects of our culture. So
it's totally poetry. It's improvised poetry. I mean, it's poetry with singing. It's just and it's the lyrical language. I actually learned a Kutsia for my friend's wedding, and I've studied under a really amazing artist. And dude, I told her I was going to do a Kutsia, and she wrote me like a 3-page Kutsia that was so intense. I'm like, that's amazing that you just like thought of this like off the top of your head. But also, my pronunciation is so bad. We wound up going with something a little bit more simple, but I just love that she's like, "Oh, you want Kutsia? Here you go, pow!" And she pops off like 3 pages of like really intense and lyrical bars that are amazing.
exactly.
Yeah.
When you have a chance, Sharon, my intro for the podcast is Kutsia sung
Yeah.
by yeah. Did you hear?
It's very sweet. I
I
do
know.
love it.
Yes,
That's
yes.
adorable.
I'll be honest, I can't hear the words. There's something about me is that I can't register the Kutsia words.
That's how I feel about some rap.
Yeah.
I
Oh,
mean,
true.
like,
You're
I
valid.
understand a lot of rap, but sometimes I'm like, whoa, that guy is really fast, so
Yeah.
I'm not following, but
Yeah.
it's okay. I still
Yeah.
like the vibe, so it works.
That's valid.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a skill and just like having the ear for it. So so thank you, Sharon, for explaining us your identities. Those are very important because they represent who you are. Just moving on a little bit, I kind of want to talk about regrets if you have any. These are in the forms of should have, could haves, and so forth.
Yeah, I have a lot of regrets.
Don't we all? You're right.
And I have to say, like, I just feel like you kind of have to, because then you realize the mistakes you make, and you're going to make mistakes.
Damn true.
It's fine. It doesn't dismiss or discount your present reality. Whenever people say, "Oh, I have no regrets because I love my life now," I'm like, that's not the question. It's not saying you did something wrong and now your life is miserable. It's like, no, I had a mentor when I was in Minnesota, and I was trying to decide if I should stay in Minnesota or come to New York. And I was really debating it. I was in my 20s. And he was like, look, Sharon, you're smart, you're young, there are no wrong choices. And I'm like, that's fair. You keep thinking there's a right choice, like a definitive right choice. And that's not true. There's different choices. And then you can look back and be like, that I could have made a different choice and it would have been different. And do I regret it? Who knows? Maybe I do. But there were some key moments where I just moved to New York. I was interning at two locations. I was interning at a like a free press newspaper, and then at a fashion agency. And both places were, I mean, pretty intense. It's New York. But the first one to offer me a job was the fashion agency, which I was kind of bummed about because I really wanted to work at the paper. But the paper was going through transition, and I don't know how long it would be before they would offer me a job. So I took the fashion agency job just because, you want financial security. And I can say I regretted that. I should have stuck with the paper, because even though it was hard, I wasn't getting paid. It would have sucked to keep waiting and struggle with it. It would have just put me on a different path. It would have strengthened my connections with some of the writers there who became very good writers. They were all very good writers, but it would have just led me to a different circle. When I went to the fashion agency, it's not like the worst. I think it led me on a 10-year path in a different creative circle, and I met a lot of great people. I met Anne, my best friend in the world, through that circle. So I'm not saying, oh, if I didn't meet her, that would have been the worst thing in the world. It's just, it would have been a different existence. When I was working with a youth program, I wanted to get ladies who had married young and had children young, and I wanted them to speak ideally to young girls about possibly not having kids and not marrying young. And none of them would admit to making a mistake. Like, they were like, I don't regret it. I don't regret it. I love my children. And I'm like, I'm not saying you don't love your children. I'm not saying, this isn't the best thing in the world that you had this kid. Can you just admit that, hey, maybe it would have been okay if you waited as well? Like, if you don't want to call it a regret, just call it, a different choice. Because I think there's a quote from Mark Twain. I mean, this seems a little harsh, but I feel like it's accurate in this situation. Mm-hmm. But he said it's easier to fool people than to convince them that they've been fooled. Because once somebody makes a mistake, they stand by it and they're like, nope, I meant to do that, or I don't have a problem with that. And they get really defensive. And you're like, it's okay. Just say like, hey, there's this misstep. I should have done this. This could have come out. Don't have to stand by every single decision you made in your life. It's okay to admit that something went wrong, because then it adds to the humility of being like, hey, I made a mistake, and I can correct it. I can be better about my future decisions. I can be more intentional, and I can learn from this mistake. I can learn from this misstep and be like, okay, next time I'm going to stick to my guns. Next time I'm going to do this. And that just says nothing about the mistake and your character and the fact that you don't love every moment of today. It just says we're all human. We make a less than, good decision every now and then.
Yes, we do.
We can learn from them.
Absolutely. I think the biggest thing is just learning from your regret, and acknowledging it is very important. So thank you for sharing that.
Fine. I feel like empowering is very similar to healing. You kind of have to find your own strength to move on.
I transition to projects. Tell us about your current projects and passion you're working on. What are you doing presently? And let's explore your hobbies and so forth.
Lots of hobbies, too many. So, I mean, I think the big thing is I'm constantly exploring my curiosities. Again, I'm going back into stand-up. I think it's such a fascinating form in terms of writing. And then my husband and I finished a short that we're trying to get out there. It was a creative short that we filmed right after the pandemic about paranoia. So we're trying to promote that. And then I'm trying to get my poetry published. Got a stack of poems. I know.
I cannot
wait.
Trying
to get it out there. Trying to find basically support for all my writing, because there's a lot of creative energy out there, and I want to tap into it and get my work out there.
And if you are starting a GoFundMe, let us know. We'll share it on the podcast, okay?
Definitely. Actually, I want to start a publishing company. I'm just going to say that right now because I did some creative writing workshops during the pandemic, and there's so much talent out there in the Hmong community and beyond. And I just feel like they need a space, and I want to find a way to like basically get their work out there because if 5 people read your work and they connect with it, dude, that's worth it. This is the time for it. The internet is for that. So we need to get people their audience, and yeah, why not? We got to connect people their work to the people that need to hear it. Yeah,
Absolutely.
that's my big project.
Sharon, I think you should curate this and be like the point person for that to create. I always call it creating spaces. And if you don't create spaces, make your space. So
Yeah, for sure.
let's make it.
Yeah, it's a big one.
Okay, so Sharon, what's still in the present moment? I know we talked about grief, we talked about regrets, sadness, and so forth. I kind of want to, and you also shared a bit about your self-compassion story, but let's talk about how you empowered yourself and how you healed yourself. Like, what kind of helped you reclaim Sharon's, I'm not sure what it is. What helped you reclaim Sharon's, what she wanted to reclaim?
Joie de vivre. That's called Joyful Life.
Okay.
Okay, so I will say that, full disclosure, I think I've always been a depressive person. I told my husband, I'm like, what 8-year-old writes like sad reflections? Because again, I journaled all the time and I used to
Same.
write, yeah, like the craziest things as a kid. And I'm like, why am I so moody?
Well, hold on before you go on, because I'm like that too. People always tell
yeah.
me, Sai, you think too much. Sai, you're too
I
intense
know.
and all that stuff. But the beauty of it, Sharon, our mind works very differently. It's because our mind, and I have ADHD, our mind can capture, synthesize, and bring in these. And because we bring this information, we think a lot. So hence why I know you love the benefits of journaling, and I love it too. But anyways, continue.
Yeah. No, I think I've just been a very introspective person.
Mm-hmm.
And then with that comes a degree of depression because you ask big questions very early in life. So yeah, I would say I am basically depressed a lot. And it's weird because, people think of depression as like clinical depression. It can get to that degree, but I'm always aware of my level of depression. I have bouts where I'm like, oh, this is weird. I don't love this. And then, gotta call the therapist. And then there are bouts where I'm like, ugh, this again. It's like an annoyance. And then I have to just be like, all right, this is when I, plan a trip to somewhere warm and sunny.
Let's go.
I've learned to kind of respond to my depression with, positive things. That's kind of why I do need to do things. I do need to play the guitar, write a poem, go on a trip, make a really amazing dinner. These are all things. These are my endorphins kind of kicking in, running, going on a bike ride. These are my self therapy because I can feel myself getting a little down, getting a little frustrated, feeling the weight of the world a little bit more than I like. And I don't know if I shared this with you, Sai, but I've started to notice cycles. And I do believe, obviously, we're just basically a capsule of chemicals. But once a month, I have a very depressive kind of spike. And there's a date to it because it does happen so regularly that I'm like, oh, what day is it? Okay, this makes sense. It's almost like, having your period because it probably is associated with it. It's like a terrible hormone spike. And then I'm like, oh, yeah, I'm probably completely depleted of dopamine or something. But yeah, then I get into like a little depressive spiral, and just knowing that what it is and when it's coming, I can kind of anticipate. I'm like, oh, I better go for a walk. I should go and snuggle cut Dusty, my cat. I should go and see a show, go to a concert, because now I can anticipate my kind of chemical kind of like ebbs and flows. And even knowing that has been really empowering because now I feel like I feel less. I know it comes, it's shorter periods of time, and I know how to deal with it. Just understanding what my status quo is, like what normal is, then I don't let that depressive dip become my standard. It doesn't dictate who I am. It doesn't dictate what I think is normal. Because that's the most frustrating thing about depression. It tries to convince you that your depressive state is the normal. Like, oh, this is reality and everything else is fake. Like, no, you're fake. Reality is better than this. And when you're in a depressive spiral, it's hard to see the surface. because you've gone so far.
Mm-hmm.
And it's sad because, you don't have any context because you're so depressed. And if you
And
don't
you're
know how
living
to,
in your own reality, which your
yeah,
depressive reality is
it's an
not
echo
reality.
chamber. Yeah,
It
you're like,
is.
you'll
Bounces
never
off.
get out. This is who you are. And they're like, no, not it really. But it took me many years to figure out my cycles and figure out like how to combat it, to, plan for it. Say, if that day is coming up, I should plan a brunch with my friends. I should plan for this. Or if I know that there's going to be like something frustrating, like my sister's birthday, my husband and I went out for dinner and we celebrated her birthday. We had, a little cake, and I just knew, I'm like, this is going to be a difficult day for me. So how am I going to be proactive? And,
Rather than avoid it and not even think about it, and then it pops up at 7 p.m. when you're
or just be like, I forgot. And then now I remember, and it
and,
hits me like a ton of bricks. I'm like,
and
nope.
it's unhealthy, right? And those are all the emotions that you're avoiding. I think one thing that you brought up, this is a form of self-care, Sharon, and awareness. So you're noticing that from your baseline, your normal
Mhm.
baseline functioning, that you feel these feelings and so forth. So I always compare depression to asthma. Some days you can walk up 20 flights of stairs. Some days you can barely get out of bed. If you don't do anything, if you're continually smoking and eating fried and unhealthy food, your asthma will be worse. And oftentimes depression leads us there. So what you're doing is healthy choices. So good job.
Yeah. It's taken me my whole life to figure out
Well,
myself. Yeah. I mean, but thankfully, I feel like this generation, they're a little smarter about this, and they're a little bit more open, I would hope, about talking about it. So, yeah, the fact that I couldn't talk about it or I was afraid of it kept me from really understanding it and learning about it, and treating it.
yeah.
So, yeah, my hope is that this next generation, smarter than us, gets help right away, learns their home body, learns how to
Mm-hmm.
take care of themselves better. I'm 50, so I'm a Gen X. We love depression.
I just want to comment on that from Gen X, which is who you
Mhm.
are, and I'm a millennial, and then
Okay.
the Gen Z as well. Like it's the purpose of this podcast is for us to disseminate wisdom. So your generation, in terms of the Hmong diaspora, took all the coming to America, adjusting to America, and I think your generation for dealing with the bullies at school because you all took the brunt of all the bullies too as well, and then all the culture thing. And then my generation was like, oh, we're a bit more settled in, we kind of speak English and we're adjusting, and at that point we're dealing with our own finding ourselves. And then this generation, Gen Z, they get the established aspects of what
Mm-hmm.
we want and what we hope. So it takes all of us, and Sharon, you passing your knowledge because you pass it to me and I pass it to Ding, and then we're just passing it to everyone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, that's the hope, right? To make the community better, to prepare them better
Mm-hmm.
for
Damn
each new
true.
generation. So,
Damn
yeah.
true. Damn true. All right, let's transition. Okay, so we talk about empowerment. Anything else on present that you want to share with us and your present reality, Sharon?
I don't know. I feel like, okay, it's weird because, like, in the
Mm-hmm.
context for children, it's different, because I'm older. So, like, my present reality is about dealing with aging now.
Tell us.
Yeah. I'm going through it. Just turned 51, and it's weird because like I'm looking at it now and it's like, oh, this is when people are like expecting me to like sit down. We're like,
Mm-mm.
all right, grandma, you're done. Yeah, it's different now. Like I feel like uh when I was young, I would meet my aunties and I thought they were like a million years old. Dude, they were like 30 and 40. And now I'm 50 and I'm like, I'm that old auntie, but I'm like, I still got some fire. I
You
got
have
things to
a
do.
young ass spirit and a go getter spirit too.
Oh, I think like there's not a time when I feel like I'm done.
Mm-hmm.
Like I still got things to do. I feel like I don't know where people are in terms of like what expectations are. Like, oh, you're this age, you should be doing this. You're this age, you should be doing this. Man, that's all out the window. I don't know. I feel like just do your thing, you know, live your life, how old or young you are. If you want to do this, do it. This is the time.
Damn true. And no one has all the answer. No one has a template for this, for the most part. No one has a
Yeah.
template to be coming to America, marrying a Mika person and then moving to New York City and then dating online. Like that was never written. Yeah.
Well, but yeah, Brandon and I bypassed that because we didn't have kids. It was a choice. And we just decided, like, yeah, we have a lot to do. We don't not love kids, obviously. We love our nieces and nephews very much, and we care for a lot of kids. But we never felt the need to have our own. And I think Brandon, I mean, I was kind of like, whatever, I'm fine either way. I can have kids, I cannot. I'm not one of those women who are like, I need to have children. Like, I get it. They're cute. They are, but I don't need to have my own. I have 14 nieces and nephews, to connect with. That's a lot.
That is a lot.
That's plenty. Plenty for me.
Yeah. No, I hear you, Sharon. I'm a child protection social worker, so I did for 9 years. So I feel like I took care of so many other people's kids in the most traumatic and hardship and drug-induced area. And also, I have 28 nieces and nephews, so I get you, me, and I'm the youngest. But as a man, it's different to a woman in terms of our culture. But what I'm trying to say is like I get where you're coming from. You yourself are raising a community too here, so it takes time and effort. So yeah, in New York City.
Yeah, it was weird because I think I was one of the first people, I think in my family for sure, but like in my generation who's like, I'm not having kids, and people they could not get over it. They were just like, it's not too late, Sharon. Like my mom's like, your auntie had a kid at 50. And I'm like, yeah, Mom, it's not happening. Just, it's all right. They still have ideas.
They still have ideas and hopes.
Yeah. And I'm like, no, we're good. We're good.
That's too funny.
Fine.
Let's transition to the future aspiration. And again, Sharon, I like to read the definition of aspiration to the guests. And also, what I like to tell people is read the dictionary. When you understand the word, it gives it so much more weight to it. It's just kind of like, oh, that's a car. But no, the car can do so much more. If it's a truck, it can take stuff. If it's a truck or four-wheeler, you can go to the outdoors or go to a rocky area. So this is why I like definition. Future aspiration. Aspiration stands for a strong desire, longing, or aim or ambition. Intellectual aspiration, a goal or object that is strongly desired. The presidency has always been her aspiration since childhood. In other words, are craving and yearning. Sharon, can you talk to us about your future aspiration? And I'm going to prompt you a little bit. So these are I want, I desire, I yearn, I will be, I aim for it.
Well, I mean, I alluded to this earlier. I mean, I want all voices to be heard. I want all stories told. I want my story told. I'm writing. But I feel like the traditional publishing outlets don't want to hear like normal stories. In the literary community, it's called the single story. So every refugee has to tell the same story about my parents were so great, we struggled so hard. I'm so grateful for living and having this experience. Basically, what makes each refugee, you so unique, which is fine. It's just great. Go ahead and tell the single story. But we have more stories than that. The way we look at the world, how we process, what's going on. Our perspective is so important, and it is different and is unique. And I literally want to see like more stories told that are not the single story, that is told from a perspective that is unique to, refugee immigrant communities. It can't always be the mainstream same perspective.
What is the legacy behind that? Because there's a legacy or there's an impact that you want to imprint.
I want to encourage other writers. I want to find a home for their work. I want to find an audience. I want to create an audience that basically doesn't have to be just Hmong people. Obviously, if it's good writing, everybody wants to hear it. I just don't think that the traditional publishing venues are looking for this and they're not promoting it. And now that we have the internet, it's huge. We can do anything. And then it kind of becomes difficult to find your people because it's everyone all the time. And creating that community, that's the challenge. So yeah, that's my desire.
I wanted to show an example. There's a book by Kathy something Park.
It's called, yeah, Minor Feelings. I've read it.
I know.
No, it's significant. I think it's definitely been going on for a while, because basically all storytelling is kind of controlled by mainstream media. So,
Mm-hmm.
like Random House, all the Condé Nast, all the publishing companies, they want everything kind of like packaged in a certain way. And, the immigrant experience, the refugee experience is not part of that conversation. And it always feels like it's a condescending look at people of color. Like, we'll talk to you when we want your perspective. Like, no, our perspective is part of the American conversation. Our perspective is the American perspective. And it's kind of BS to be told otherwise, and to have these cultural guardians who refuse to let go of the reins or to include any kind of diverse
Wait,
voices.
I'm sorry. I'm going to rephrase that. Guardians are meant to protect. They are gatekeepers.
Oh,
Guardians.
gatekeepers for sure.
Mhm.
Yeah, and it's really ridiculous because I don't know if this is still the case, but I went to a reading once of an Asian American writer, and she was saying how like she had a very good book. It was a great book, and if she had a hard time selling it, and she kept going to different publishing houses, and they're like, "Oh, it's okay. We're gonna pass on this. We already have an Asian writer on our roster." I'm like, "Oh yeah, one. That's good. That's good enough for you." And it's just so dismissive and so ridiculous. I'm like, this is dumb. Why are we trying to fight for a seat at the table with a community that doesn't really understand or value our voices? We need to just create our own community,
Exactly.
our own audience. And then, yeah, just let everyone talk, let everyone have a voice. And honestly, I will say that I do like editing, so I want to help people kind of distill their thoughts and help them tell their story in a clear and meaningful way. So yeah, I think that's where my skills are kind of taking me and what I want to do next.
Exactly. Be the change that you wish to see in the world, Sharon. I think that's wonderful. Yeah, let's fight that. Be that example. We need more of that. And I know that you're not the only one thinking about this. We have
Oh, yeah.
our Black and brown Latino brothers and sisters who are doing this as well.
Hmm.
Okay. So Sharon, I really love of your idea and your hopes and dreams of starting a publishing company. I think that's really good. And what I also hear in there is just like passing wisdom on to those authors and people who want to create books or just writing in general. So let's transition to the wisdom Sharon part. And I would love to hear what you have to share with us.
So, in addition to the wishes that I made for Linnaeus, who I dedicated the letter to, I have other, I guess, pieces of wisdom that I feel are true for anyone, everyone.
Yes.
But I think might sound a little hackneyed because I know that you've heard this somewhere, one way or another before. But I feel
Share
like
it.
this has meant something to me. So I've always said that your looks are the least interesting thing about you because your thoughts, what you've been through, what you've learned, how you think, and what you are passionate about, that's all infinitely much more interesting than what's on the outside. So you have to cultivate what's inside you more than what's on the outside. I mean, that feels like an obvious one to me, but I remember telling somebody that once, and it was like they couldn't wrap their head around it. I don't know why. I think we live in a very like internet face
We
forward
do.
kind of world, and I'm like, yeah, you're beautiful, but what are you thinking? What are your thoughts? How do you
Exactly.
like there's a lot of things out other than the
Yeah.
exterior.
I know, because
So
my biggest thing is just like instant gratification. Social media teaches us that, and also we forget about ourselves and to cultivate that. Yeah, continue more. I want to
mhm.
hear more.
Oh yeah, cultivate your interests, cultivate your thoughts, your personality. My gosh, there's so much, work to be done. I unfortunately have a relative who's like, "Oh, I'm the same person I always was. I love it. I love who I am." And I'm like, "Yeah, if you're not learning and if you're not changing, then what is the point of each day? You're given time on this earth to learn and to improve and to be a better person than you were yesterday. Yeah, use that time to make yourself better. Oh my gosh, I don't want to be the same person. If next year you come to me and I say the exact same things, there's a
Right?
problem.
It definitely is.
I better be learning something between
Yes.
now and next year, even now and tomorrow.
No, I think those are powerful.
But also so I grew up a camper. I worked at youth care, Camp Sunrise for many years, and I love the outdoors.
Where's that at?
Well, it's in Minnesota, but it
Mhm.
is defunct. They unfortunately dissolved back in 2000. I want to say 23. Yeah, it was recent. Very unfortunate. It was a great camp, and I know a lot of Twin Cities people had experiences there, and it was a wonderful camp. But it did create a very deep love and respect for the outdoors. That's why I have a cabin, and Si's went to it, helped
So
us build
fun.
it. Thank you so much.
So
Uh,
fun. Thank you.
but yes, the Catskills is my basically the only reason I can live in New York, because I need trees.
And the Catskills, everyone, is Hudson Valley, which is upstate New York. It's beautiful mountains.
Gorgeous. I highly recommend.
Yeah.
So I was taught at Camp Sunrise the campsite rule, which is that you leave every campsite better than how you found it. Like, you pick up litter, you don't damage it. Keep it better, or at least as nice as it was when we first got to it. But yeah, the campsite rule is also true for people. So every relationship, friendship that you're in, try to leave it better than how you found it. Because everyone is on a journey too, and you want to be their positive experience in life. I think a lot of times we dismiss people, or there's a lot of negativity I'm seeing in this world, and it's really disheartening. And I'm not saying that we go in with this very kind of like naive idea that everyone's great. It's the idea that you can be a positive force in people's lives. You can choose that. That's a choice.
Sharon, let me ask you more specific questions. So I want to ask more about being a woman, or when you're a child, being a girl growing up. And I want to kind of pass some wisdom to the folks. I give to you, the next generation, among girls and boys, this wisdom because I want you to blank. And yeah, just start with that.
I guess we could even transition from this wisdom to why I want this, because I know that in my life, it's hard for me to help my own family steer clear of the rage bait. I have to remind my mom of my nephews not to read certain things. Because again, our thoughts are our emotions, and we don't want to expose ourselves to so much rage, because the algorithm gives you negativity. The
Right.
algorithm tries to kind of provoke you. They're like needling you towards more content.
Because we are in a capitalist society.
We are, but we're also in this world where they're like engagement. So they want you to click. They want you to look at the next video. They want you to continue being on the internet until your very last breath. But I keep telling them, like, you don't have to look at it. And if you're going to look at it, look at positive things, because this rage goes nowhere and it doesn't service you. It's not helping the community. You have to lead with love. You have to keep positivity. It's an active job to stay optimistic and to stay helpful and hopeful. I think what's unfortunately in this political climate, we are just exposed to like the worst, like, oh, this is the worst. Look at this terrible thing. Look at racism. Look at, war, unfortunately. And it is terrible. It's horrible. But we do not have the mental capacity to have all of this all the time. We were not made for this sort of stimulation. And I feel like our brains and our emotions are shutting down because we're not supposed to think about all the horrible things in the world 24/7. That's bad for your health. And also, just, man, that's a really grim reality. You have
It
the
is.
choice. Yeah, you have the choice to live in a world where you can have positivity. And it's not dismissing the fact that you don't care about racism, or you don't care about, what is it, the war and the conflict in Ukraine. It's not saying that you don't care. It's like, what is watching that video? Is it making you more empowered? Is there anything that's causing you to change your behavior? Awareness is one thing, but action is something else. And if you're not acting on all this rage, then, well, I mean, not in a negative way. If you're not
No, I know
acting
what
in
you
a
mean. No,
positive way
it's
to
healthy
counter
rage.
rage,
Yeah, right.
yeah, if you're not directing that rage towards positive change, then that rage just lives in you, and it lives rent free, and it just kind of
Rent-free,
makes you a
right.
more miserable person.
It
I'm so
does.
sorry. So yes, I hope that people remember the campsite rule. Remember that everybody is kind of going through it. We need to lead with love, keep positivity in our life to counter the rage. I'm sorry, I just can't tolerate the
No, I hear
rage.
you. Sharon, there's a quote that I heard from a social worker. I went to an event the other day. It's the Congressional Social Work Caucus. And one of the speakers, Courtney Kidd, she's a professor. She said this best. I think she got up from somewhere. So the quote says, regarding the political environment we're in right now, it says, "The tired do not question, and the overwhelmed do not demand better." I'm going to repeat that again. The tired do not question, and the overwhelmed do not demand better. So I love what you're saying, Sharon. Just like take care of yourself, understand that this is currently happening. And the system that we're in, when I tell folks I struggle with this, with the sadness and the bombardment and the all the executive orders, just know that we're not alone. And I love what you said. Put your energy somewhere. I know people are not happy about a certain party that did not win. So put your money on it. They need your money. I know you're frustrated. I know we're frustrated, but they need the money to win. And that's it. That's all I can say.
Yeah. And also, you know what? You can encourage your friends to vote. I mean, this is the thing that drives me crazy. Like, people are mad about things, and I'm like, did you vote? You know, did you volunteer at your local poll? Like, there are things you can do if you're mad. So do that, you know? Just watching videos does not improve anything. I'm sorry, I sound so old and crotchety, but
Don't be. I'm a
that's,
political organizer, Sharon. I go door knock. I'm a phone banker. So
I know.
what I do is just barely making a dent in it. So we need all of us. So
Yeah.
let's transition a little bit with this, okay? So Sharon, I want you to dedicate and speak directly to Linnaeus. You can say, "My hope for you is, I know you can, I believe that, blank," and just share a message of encouragement.
Yeah. I think overall, Linnaeus, my hope for you is that you remember who you are, because you're such a good person. And a lot of times your teenage years makes you question yourself. I just, I know that that is an age old proverb, you know, teenage years make you filled with doubt and questions your self esteem. And I know you're a good person. I know you're a very sweet and thoughtful person to your core. And I want you to trust yourself, trust your instincts. I want you to really love yourself and be gentle with yourself. And yeah, just remember who you are.
No, you did really good. Sorry. I thought you said talking to me. Okay. You talked about your future, you talked about your wisdom, and you talked about hope for yourself. I guess other wisdom. We're basically almost done. Other wisdoms you want to share? Oh, we have one. Okay. All right. I'm going to ask you about someone wants to follow exactly in your footsteps who is struggling dealing outside the race. Oh, wait, sorry. I'm going to actually ask you the question. All right. Thank you, Sharon, for sharing that. I'm going to ask you another question regarding wisdom sharing. If someone wanted to follow in your footsteps or is considering moving outside the state to become a writer, a publisher, an artist, what advice would you give them? What cheat code would you give them so they don't have to struggle to some of the struggles that you went through?
Well, my cheat code is to meet people, because people are resources.
Mm-hmm.
I think in the beginning, I sent my resume out like crazy. It
Mm,
was so sad. And it was frustrating because you get a lot of rejection in
right.
whatever field you work in, but especially in writing and publishing. Yeah, there's a lot of writers out there. But meet people, because I have writer friends, I have communities, I have really, really cool, awesome people that inspire me. And they're my resource, they're my lifeline. If I didn't have them, I would be kind of like in the dark, feeling like there is no community, that I'm writing into a void, you know, that there's nobody out there that wants to read my work. And that's a horrible way to feel.
It
But
is.
yeah, but I have my friends read them. I read their work. We, you know, support each other, and it's amazing just to like know that somebody connects with you. I read my piece at an event once, and a very, very sweet and genuine Hmong guy followed me at the door, and he just kind of like chased me down. And he's like, "Sharon, I want to tell you, I saw myself in your piece, and it really meant something to me." Dude, that was it. That's
Right?
all I needed. I'm like, oh,
Right?
good. I can retire this piece because it connected with somebody. So yeah, as you, we have all these ambitions of being like, oh, I want to be published, I want to do this, da da da. But what it comes down to is like, you just want people to hear you, and you want to connect, and that's through meeting people and make your own network. You know. because yeah, everybody's out there and they're looking for you.
Yeah, absolutely. Sharon, at the beginning, you talked about one thing that's important for me is that has kept me alive is the curiosity. Like I'm like a kid in candy store. When I walk in New York City and I see different neighborhoods, oh, I want to go there, I want to go there, or just traveling or meeting people, I have that curiosity because it's like puzzle pieces. So can you talk about the importance of curiosity and how it would help someone who wants to follow in your footsteps as a writer and so forth?
Oh yeah, for sure. I think curiosity is for everybody. I guess this is the thing that really kind of frustrates me. Like we live in New York City, and whenever I do things, like some people are like, "No, no, no." I'm like, "Why are you living in New York City?" But this is true for everything. Like, why are you alive? If you're not going to go and
No.
enjoy it. Well, New York, it's more of a financial thing. Like our rent is so expensive, and the cost of living is so expensive, and it's such a hustle. I'm like, why do you live in New York if you're not going to go and enjoy it? If you're not going to go and see all the beautiful venues, the museums, the outdoor art exhibits, just to walk like the parks. Oh my gosh, there's so much amazing things happening every second. Yeah, the curiosity is also like, hey, I want to see it. I want to experience it. I've never been to, this thing. Let's go and do this. Last year was the first time we went to the Hmong, Rhode Island New Year, and it was amazing. They were so adorable. The Rhode Islanders were so happy to see us
I
that
bet.
we hung out with them and we had a blast, and they were so cool. And it's one of those things where you're like, oh, it happens every year, and we didn't know about it. We didn't go, but as soon as we did, we're like, this is great. These people are great, and I'm so glad to have met them. So go and do things. Like if something's happening, be a part of it. This is why we're alive.
I think it's beautiful, just the way you see the world, and I think these are the things that we want to share with folks, like younger generation, is to explore, to go further away from the tree, and
Yeah.
just it brings so much life. So thank you for that.
Well, Brandon and I always have this joke. There's like, you don't regret the things you do,
Hmm.
but you always regret the things you don't do.
Yep. Damn
Yeah.
true.
So don't do it. Do it. You won't have anything to regret.
Damn true. Okay, Sharon, is there anything else that you want to add regarding inspiration?
Well, you asked me about a quote, and
Hmm.
I actually have two that have been really guiding principles for me. So the first one is from Richard Feynman, and it goes, I'd rather have questions that can't be answered than answers that can't be questioned. I just love the idea that certainty is death. Like to not know, to question, and to wonder, and to try to find out is kind of the point of learning and trying to understand this world and who we are. So that's one of my favorites. My second favorite, and I think they're pretty much tied, is from Carl Sagan, who said, and this is a paraphrase, but it's from his Cosmos series, we are how the universe knows itself. Because when you think about it, we are, atoms. We're just, the same thing that makes a caterpillar or a tree. We're just things, but we have feelings, we have expressions, we have the ability to like think and emotions. So we're feeling things, and the universe is letting us do that. So we should do it. I pass this wisdom to everyone out there who needs it, because if it takes you a moment to be inspired, I want you to take that moment and live your life. Oh, Dusty woke up.
Yay!
He's
Let's
now
do a
looking at us.
celebrity appearance. Bring a celebrity
No,
appearance.
look at now that he knows we're here. Hold on, let me grab him. Okay, I got him. We only have 2 minutes. He's gonna run. He wants me to mess with him. But look, every time I'm on Zoom, he comes to look at me. Look
Hi,
at.
buddy.
He's like, "What's going on? There's so much stuff." And he just woke up, so he's all groggy.
Look at him. He's the cutest.
My baby.
Everyone, this is like perfect example of a rag doll. He will let you do almost anything to him.
I know he's just a little squishy pants.
Sharon, thank you so much for sharing. I want to wrap up the episode just reflecting the things that you talked about. You talked about the importance of curiosity, the importance of words. You shared your story regarding interracial marriage, and you talk about the empowerment of self. And one of the most powerful things that I really want people to really understand is your story, your healing, and your vulnerability on grief. I think this is something that, like you said, Hmong people do suffer or are depressed in silence. So let's bring this out. So those are very powerful. I love your idea of creating community and just being the change agent for that too as well, and also just sharing your story. Thank you so much, Sharon.
Thank you. It's been an honor.
So just for the listeners, we continue to invite you all to be active participant, listening to stories, sharing stories, and our most important thing is inspiring the next generation. So please do share this for teenagers and so forth. It is meant for them as much as it is meant for us as well. If you have questions, comments, ideas, or thoughts, you can find me, send it to my social media, send it to my email. My email is xai at letterstoumai.podcast.com with an S. Add me on social media at Letters Tou Mai Podcast. I'm on all the major podcasts from Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and so forth. And I just want to leave you all on one last quote that embodies the Letters Tou Mai Podcast. And it's from Nelson Mandela, who is a South African revolutionary and nonviolent. And the quote says, "Our children are the greatest hope we have, and the future belongs to them." Sharon, any last words?
Well, I think these are all my words. Thank you again for having me.
Thank you for joining us on Letters to My Podcast inaugural Season 1. We hope you can hear the power of storytelling, vulnerability, and self-expression rooted in the Hmong tradition. Let's continue to bridge the digital divide. I am Sai's niece. My name is Emma, and he is my uncle. He has helped me become more confident and made me come out of my comfort zone. I remember one day he took us nieces out to Dairy Queen. We decided to race back to the car, but my sister ran too fast and slipped under the car. It was memorable because it was funny, and those moments are something I would cherish forever. Letters to My Podcast is where vulnerability meets self-discovery. Self-discovery meets writing. Journaling, writing letters, or handwriting isn't just about writing what is on your mind or reliving your experiences. It is a medium for self-expression and self-reflection. Take a pause and time to think. For Sai, it began with journaling in college, a practice that became a lifeline. He poured his fears, tears, failures, successes, self-doubt, and inspiring quotes on index cards. At one point, he had over 300 index cards in a shoebox. Writing helped him discover a powerful path to self-awareness, increasing his mental well-being and assisting in processing his emotions. As a social worker, a pen and paper were his constant companion, helping him process interactions and to not miss anything important. Sai has benefited from the power of writing and wants to revitalize this practice and share it with you all. A little bit more about my uncle, who is the host. Sai, he, him, his, is a first-generation Hmong American man, social worker, and community organizer with over 12 years of experience. Sai is diagnosed with ADHD. He is passionate about building community through storytelling, self-expression, and the importance of affinity with their human counterpart. Sai believes each generation builds upon the next and seeks to uplift the next generation. One quote that embodies Letters to My Podcast. Our children are the greatest hope we have. The future belongs to them. Nelson Mandela, South African revolutionary. Letters to My Podcast focuses on passing wisdom and uplifting the next generation. It is our turn to pass the torch of wisdom and leave the world a better place than we found it. Let us impart our hopes, dreams, and future to the next generation. If you enjoyed this episode, please like, subscribe, and give a 5-star rating to help with the algorithm. Letters to My Podcast is on Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Facebook, YouTube, Spotify, Blue Sky, and Instagram. Disclaimer: Sai Ying, LMSW, is not establishing a therapist-client relationship with listeners through this podcast, and any reliance on the content is at your own risk. The views expressed in this podcast are Tsai Ying's personal opinions and do not necessarily reflect the views of their employer or licensing board. For any mental health concerns or questions, please seek guidance from a licensed mental health professional or call or text the National Suicide Hotline 988. Thanks for listening to Letters That Speak, Stories That Heal. Tsai's niece Emma, outro done. Oh, ciao.